What up, everybody, and welcome to Baz on Blades. My name is Baz, and I talk about blades. Guys, today we're going to do a little mod shop video. And yesterday, I posted a review video of the new BladeHQ exclusive of the Columbia River Knife and Tool Pilar. And we've got in this exclusive the quote-unquote upgrade. We've got the carbon fiber G10 laminate front scale and a Sandvik 12C27 blade steel upgrade. And another reviewer who I know you're all familiar with, and if you're not, please go over and check out his channel, and that is Slicey Dicey. And Brian at Slicey Dicey also got his example of this BladeHQ exclusive in, but he had a few quality control issues on it. Now, fortunately, my example was in really good shape straight out of the box, and I had no plans on doing a disassembly with this knife, because I did not say this in my review video, but this knife was actually purchased to use in my upcoming 1,000 sub giveaway as one of the prizes. It was not purchased for me to keep. But since Brian had some issues, I started thinking to myself, you know what, I'd like to take a look at the inside of this knife and see what it looks like. Might as well get that on video for the viewers. So that's what we're going to do right now. And we'll see what we see. Now we've got the whole kit out here. Let's start moving stuff out of the way. That's all reassembly stuff. Now this is a pretty simple knife, guys. We have got a single T8 Torx for the pivot, and then T6 that is holding the body of the knife itself together. Let's go ahead. We're going to take this Weehaw tool and we're going to start breaking loose some screws here. And of course that is free spinning straight through to the other side. So we're going to have to get at least a couple of tools on this, which is always extremely awkward in front of the camera. Alright guys, now you got to keep in mind, if I seem like I'm extremely awkward with these tools, that I am reaching around a camera tripod having to do this, and basically I'm looking through the camera doing this right now, guys, so it's extremely awkward, so bear with me. We'll get these body screws out. And you know, I did, when I got this knife, I did do a slight adjustment on the pivot and didn't have any issues right there. It did have some resistance on it. It felt like it may have had some thread lock on it, but nothing super serious or super strong. And with these quality Weehaw bits, I didn't have any issue at all taking this knife apart. Let's get some tension off of that lock bar, and we will get this pivot screw out. Alright, there goes the male side pivot screw. We've got these body screws. Let's go ahead and take this scale off. Now this is the lock side scale. Let's take a good look at it. I see this is bead blast, but I don't know if you guys can see it in the reflection of the light. I'm seeing quite a few machining type of marks here, grind marks, radial grind marks where that was surfaced, the surface grinding on it. Now it's not super dirty, but I do see some dirt in it, and that is one of the main problems that Brian Slicey Dicey had with his example. It was full of dirt. Now he had some fitment issues also, but it was full of dirt, guys. And mine is not too bad here. It's not too bad at all. I did put a couple of drops of oil on it. There's our stop pin. Oh, wait a second, that is not our stop pin. I'm sorry, guys. The stop, that's the tube in the body screw that just fell out of it there. We'll set that aside. Here's our back spacer. Now, this is what we've got here, guys. We've got an aluminum back spacer with some, not what I would call super high-end machining on it. The fit on mine was good. It was flat. There wasn't any gaps in it or anything like that. But this is natural aluminum. It doesn't really have any finish on it. It might have a clear hard coat, which I initially thought, but I'm not thinking that so much now, guys. It's just bead blasted around the perimeter, and then the flats are pretty much left as machined, and there is a little bit of burr on those. Yeah, there's some burrs on this. And of course, I do not have any sandpaper out here. I was not expecting to have to take care of that, but this is a fairly soft aluminum, and that burr is collapsing just with some pressure from my fingernails there. That's something that I would have really liked to have seen taken care of from the factory. You wouldn't even have to set up a separate machining process for that. You just need somebody sitting there with a manual deburring tool, and just a couple of rotations in that with a manual deburring tool would have taken that off. Alright, so there's our back spacer. Now you can see here on the lock side, we've got a small diameter white nylon bushing washer here. That's pretty thick, guys. You know, not super duper thick or anything, but it's, you know, it's a good thickness of washer there. And this is a big complaint that people have had already with this model at $50. They really wanted to see phosphor bronze bushings in this, and as it turns out, guys, it's going to be white nylon bushings on both sides of the pivot. That's sort of disappointing at $50 when, say, the knife I've got in my pocket right now was $52. That's the Best Tech Paladin, and it's in bronze raced ceramic bearings on the pivot with D2 blade steel, and it is buttery smooth, perfectly centered, solid lockup, perfect detent, and cost within $2 of this model from Columbia River, but with superior construction and superior materials, I have to say. Alright, so we've got our blade there. Let's pull this on the show side. We've got a larger diameter, again a white nylon washer here, and it is just as heavy, if not slightly heavier, than the lock side. And again, this is not super dirty, guys. It's a little dusty, but not too bad at all. And most of this is just a couple of drops of oil that I put on it when I got it in, because it was totally dry. I mean, it felt totally dry. It wasn't dirty at all, but it was just dry, guys. It's like the desert. Alright, we'll take a real close look at this laminate here. And it is a laminate. It is just like the laminate used on Ontario Rat models or Ganzo Firebird models. But where those laminates are more glossy finished, this is a satin finish. So as it goes from the laminate into the side, the revealed side of the G10, it doesn't really stand out that it's a laminate. Alright, it looks, it makes it look a little more high quality, guys, even though it's basically the same thing. And I think that's something that other manufacturers need to look at, the satin rather than the gloss. Alright, so we're going to lay that back down there. Let's take our stop pin here, and for those of you that have already picked up on this, this stop pin goes right into the carbon fiber G10 laminate. There is no type of insert, no liner or anything to reinforce that, so keep that in mind if putting a lot of pressure on your your blade against the stop pin when using this little knife. And I don't see people putting a lot of pressure on. It's a fairly small knife, under 6 inches overall, and the blade length just over 2 inches. So I don't think you got a huge thing going there. Let's see here. Let's see. We're going to go right through here. Alright, that is a keyed pivot, guys, and it looks like that is keyed to that back side. So we'll go right through there. We will put our, where is our oil? And again, I'm using the break-free oil, and it's about a 10 weight oil, guys. It's not super heavy, it's not watery. It's just the perfect thing, in my opinion, for most modern pivots, regardless of whether they're washers or bearings. We'll put just a little bit on there, put that on there, and then we will put our blade on there. Alright, another drop of oil on there, and we'll put our other washer on. Let's put our, I gotta say that Brian thinks that his backspacer had some bad machining, and a lot of the dirt in his example was from that. And I've got to say, from what I'm seeing here, that very well could be an issue. It did not have the cleanest machining, and it itself was not clean on my example, even though the pivot was. So Brian, I'm thinking that you're on the right track with that, buddy. And that's disappointing, I know, but guys, that's what we can expect from Columbia River. And I am typically a big Columbia River fan, a fan of their business model. Let's say the custom design knives at a price point that is approachable by anybody. I think that's a good business model. The problem that I see with Columbia River in 2018 is that they are being left behind by all the high quality Chinese produced knife companies. And we're talking about companies, and let's just say on the lower end, companies that do G10 budget lines, you know, Best Tech and Kaiser and Tuya and brands like that are doing extremely high quality knives around the $50 price point. And you know what? They're just leaving behind companies like Columbia River. That's where they're going to have to step up their game a little bit, guys. Let's get back to the T6 here. And I'm not going to put any Loctite on this right now. Like I say, this is going to be a giveaway knife. I'm not going to be carrying this knife, as I've already done my review, and I was already familiar with the Pilar anyway. Most guys that'll be buying this knife have already owned Pilars. It's not going to be something new in their collection. It's just going to be a new version of it. Well, what do we got here? Let's get that pivot screw in there first, guys. You never know how these knives want to go back together. Excuse me. My allergies are killing me, guys, killing me. Alright, and if I did not say, one thing that I'm very happy with this knife is that they did use a T8 for the pivot. Very happy with that. So no issues there. Let's get that started, get something to hold this knife together. And that fell out, so we'll get that back through there. And we will get in here. Alright guys, now we got to go back to 2 tools to hold those body screws, and we'll stick it up like this. Alright, one thing that I'm noticing right away, before I tighten up these body screws, I'm going to have to adjust this back spacer. Now it was perfectly flush before I took it apart, and it is not perfectly flush now. And after looking at the machining on it, the holes, the through holes for these mounting screws and the tubes inside are not precision machined. And what I mean by that, guys, is these, it leaves room for it to play, and I'm going to have to push that out where it's flush and just sort of feel on it a little bit there, and then we'll have to go from there. And yes, that's a pain in the ass, but that goes back to the Columbia River. While I do like what they offer, they are losing a step compared to these new precision machine offerings from these other companies. And that's a shame, because there's not a lot of, they really are a unique company in that they take custom designs from known and popular makers, and they do these production versions at a very approachable price point. I remember years and years and years ago that one of the first Columbia River knives that I bought was the Columbia River version of the Crawford Custom Knives Made Casper folding fighter. And I had a couple of different versions of those, and I bought them as gifts for people, and I gave them away, and it took me a few years, but I finally got the money together to actually have Pat and Wes Crawford make me a custom version of that knife, which is still in my collection today, and is still, as far as I'm concerned, a standard design by which I judge folding fighters. All right, get that back out of there, get the T8 back in here, guys, and get this pivot tightened up. Alright, let's see what we got here. Alright, got to tighten her up. Now, my particular example is very sensitive as far as the centering goes, and it's going to stay that way, guys. There's a fine balance between centering and alright, I've got some blade play here for some reason, and it feels like the head to that pivot is risen. I may not have got that keyway directly in there, guys. Let's loosen that back up. Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. Let's push that out just a little bit. We can get a hold of that and get it turned. Get it back through there. Get the male portion of the pivot in there. Oh, gotta love these little screws, guys. They're so small you can't even get a hold of them with your fingertips. All right, let's see what we got here as far as centering goes. Back into being centered. This particular example, it will perfectly center, but there's a very fine line between the action and it being perfectly centered. So it's not super smooth or anything. Let's see if I can, oh, almost. I think that's more in technique. I can't middle finger spotty flick it because it's so small, guys. I can't get it in my hands the right way to get it. But it did go apart and it came back together and it's perfectly centered. The action is, you know, Columbia River nylon washer action. It's got a good detent and good lockup. And there you go, guys. That was the inside of that. You know, I didn't spend a lot of time talking about the inside of it, but it's pretty much self-explanatory. It's a very simple and basic frame lock build on this Columbia River here. I didn't see any particular issues with mine, but I do see where Brian Slicey Dicey would have had some issues with his. And you know what? Let's spend a minute and talk about that. With companies like Columbia River, that's what you get. At a lower price point, there's a higher percentage of issues. And this is a company that I would consider to be, in 2018, fairly old school, where companies like Best Tech or Tuya or Kaiser, those Chinese companies, I'm saying, are a new standard. Precision machine stuff, and that's not what you see in Columbia River. They are more old school as far as being budget goes. So you can expect some quality issues, and you may get a knife and it may have some funky blade grinds or an edge grind or some fit and finish issues, or it may be extremely dirty, or it is just on, and you may have to return a knife and get a second example. And that's just something you've got to expect out of that company. So there we go, guys. Like I say, this is going to be one of the prizes in my upcoming 1,000 sub giveaway. I've got 2 prizes down and got to figure out what the third one is going to be. But I am leaning towards doing something American made and traditional. Maybe something from Case Knives. You never know. There's been a big resurgence of interest in slip joint knives. I may throw something like that in there for a grand prize or a first place prize. You never know. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at the inside of the new BladeHQ exclusive Columbia River Pilar in carbon fiber G10 and Sandvik 12C27 for the blade steel. As always, I thank you for taking the time to watch one of my videos. God bless all of you, and we will talk to you again.